Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me? Okay, you can hear me too. Thank you. So, sorry for the delay. We are trying to sort some things out. So before Mr. John come on the line, I have something to say. So, we'll be having a project next week called Capstone Project. The project is all about building a website and having a fully built website to your portfolio. I hope you get what I'm saying. So the project will be next week, and the rest of the information will be communicated to you guys on the Slack channel. So you guys should stay tuned, and you guys will be paired to specific groups. So you're working on different projects, and let's see how it goes. So you guys will be paired to different groups. You'll be assigned some certain role and so on. So I will give you more information about that when the time comes. So thank you. So Mr. John, are you ready?
Hi, Alex. Yes, I am. Good evening.
Okay. Thank you. So you can start now.
Uh, Good evening, Alex. Good evening, everyone. And apologies for joining late. Okay, so give me a minute. I should be sharing my screen shortly. All right. Just let me know if you can see my screen. Also, if you can hear me to indicate. All right. Okay. Thank you. So in our last class, we did our first introduction to using JavaScript library, right? And we practicalized that on using React, right? We also got to talk about how to set up a React app, a React.js application, right? And how to install the packages. Remember, after setting it up, we did installation. That's the npm install. So, and the next thing we did is what each particular file in this directory, in this particular directory, what each particular file is all about, and the roles they play, right? And yeah, there's actually more to it, but when you continue when you continue creating React applications, you will get a hang of it. So, and we created a list how to create a component, how to export the component, and also how to import the component wherever you need it, right? So yeah, and today we'll still be continuing discussing proper on the extensive use of React app. So let me start off my application. Remember how to start application? npm run dev. That will start application, and this is the link. So let me open up this link. All right. So okay. Yeah. So this is where we stopped previous in our last class, right? And if you remember how we mapped out this name, we use the array method and map the items inside the array on our elements. If you go back to the list component we created, I have an array called names, and then that names contains 4 different names, and then we're mapping the names. Open your curly braces because you are calling a variable here and you want to make use of that variable. The variable in this case is names. Mapping the names, then returning li because we are under a list element. So yeah, let's just continue from here. But first, let me just clean up my code, right? So we just have the things that we really need. So I don't need this message anymore. Okay, I don't need message anymore, so I can take out the message. Let me just delete it. And also, if you're deleting, remember you called it inside a particular place. So go back to that place you called it and remove it. All right. We have done fragments. I believe we understood everything using fragments, right? So, okay, yeah. All right, so this is our list, which is this guy. So now let's style our list, right? Because I want to like manipulate it whenever I click on every other events. Whenever I interact with this list, I want it to misbehave in a particular way. Now I can have a style for it, right? So I can go to my index.css, since that is our root CSS file. So let's style the list with ULLI. Let's give each of them padding of 20 px to the bottom and top, and then let's just say 20 px around. Okay. Then add border bottom 1 px solid. Then CCC. I don't even know what color is this. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is basically what I want, right? And I also want to, whenever I hover on it, the cursor will change. You can see the cursor that I have here. This cursor is the default cursor, right? But I want in a situation where whenever I hover on each particular item, I want the cursor to look like a on-click cursor, right? Those cursor that has a hand to it. So there's also a CSS property for you to customize your cursor. And that you just say cursor pointer. We have other cursors actually. We have other cursors. We have alias, we have copy, we have resize, we have grabbing, we have not allowed. Okay, for you to see not allowed in action. So see not allowed. It has this circle band to it. So yeah, but I just need pointer. Okay, yeah, I've gotten the cursor I wanted. All right, now, so for each of these lists, I want in a situation, if I click on any of them, I should get the particular one that I clicked. So in this case, I need the the console. All right, so now how can I listen to onClick events here? Now remember in our basic JavaScript, if you want to listen to onClick, you're going to add an event listener. First of all, select the element by ID, then now apply a click event listener. Then whenever something happens or whenever there's a click event, do this. But in using a library like React, you don't need to do all those document.get element by ID, and then you now pick that element and add event listener to it. Okay, you can just go to the attributes and just pick the particular event you want. So in the attribute space, this is the li item, right? Let me zoom in more. Make sure not to delete your terminal, just hide it. All right. So this is the wait. Okay. Yeah, this is the attribute space. So after the key attributes, I can have another attribute that says on click. Now for other events, remember I told us that most of the events, if not all, starts with on, right? And if you check everything out here, you can see we have, wait, let me just type on. Okay, you're going to see exactly that functions or events that we saw. when we are doing basic JavaScript and HTML. On. But if you notice something, yeah, you can see that they are all in camel case. So it's different for libraries, right? So instead of on click in all small case, it's going to be on, then the C is going to be capital. So we have click. Okay. So this is the on click. So you can write a function here. Let's create a function. Now let's say this function can be anything. Let's say the function can be handle click item. Just this, right? Then this is an arrow function. If you remember the arrow function, then open and close your curly braces. Okay, now this function, I'll just pass it down here. Remember, you open with curly braces. This time around, it's not a string. You have to open with the curly braces, open and close, then pass the function name in. So now, whenever I click on this particular item, this function is going to be fired, right? Like it's going to be called. Now, inside this function, let me just do the basic console log. Console log, just first. So nothing on my log yet, but when I click, I'm going to get first. If I click on the second one, first again. Exactly. So when I click, it's first. Now there is something I should have talked about before we even go to the click. Remember we did the popular attribute, the class attribute in HTML, right? There is this attribute we call class, right? If also we have ID. In fact, all the attributes we talked about are all applicable here too. But then there is just a difference. Instead of normal all small case, everything is going to be in camel case. But then in React, you don't just say class. You don't just say class, right? React will not recognize this, right? So for you to use class in React, where you just give it a class attribute to that particular element or node, you're going to say class name, right? So when I put class name here, if I type anything, h1, let me just type lists. Let me just call it list item. If I go back to my, now you can see on my DOM, on the elements part, it says class list item. So by default, I'm writing class name here, but when React is bundling it or trying to render this particular application, it's going to change this class name to just class. But then when you're writing it, you're going to use class name. Now with this, I can make reference to it in my CSS. So instead of writing all this, I can just select only class name dot list item. Let's see if my styles are still here. You can see my styles are still there. All right. So now there is, remember how to pass arguments down to a function. Now I want to, whenever I click on this item, I don't want to just console log first. I want to console log the value of that particular item that I clicked. So if I clicked on John, I want to see John printed out on the console. If I clicked on Alice, I want to see Alice printed out on the console, right? And how am I going to do that? I have to pass an argument down. That's the only way I can really know where this particular function is being clicked. Now, this my handle click item will accept an argument. Remember how to pass argument down. This argument is going to be value. All right. So now how can I pass the argument on this on click? I'm going to convert this whole expression here to an arrow function. Now this on click event can accept a functions too, right? So that I just call the name of the function or I just destructure it here. And how can you do that? Just say arrow function, set your arrow function, and then handle click. Okay. Handle click item. Then for me to pass the particular argument down, I'm going to open and close a curved braces. And then I'll pass, that's this item that I'm mapping out for each individual list item. Give me the item value. Why is this thing just showing up here? All right. Now, why didn't I write it the other way around? You might be thinking, okay, I can just say, I'm thinking, why didn't we do onClick equals to, you might thinking, why didn't we do this, right? Now, there's a difference. This onClick accepts a function. And when we are passing down an argument, this is no more on a function base. So for us to listen to, if we just want to listen to just this function, we don't need to put the argument space. But if we want to represent the argument space, we have to really write it out as an arrow function. Then set that particular function to that handle click, a function we created. With that, we now have the room to pass an argument down. Probably not too clear, but you will get a hang of it. Now, when I click this item now, the value should tell me the particular name that I clicked. Now, let me console log the value. Go back. So instead of saying first, in fact, let me just remove the first entirely. We don't need it. All right. So I think I need to zoom in on the console too. Now, when I click on John, I should see John. When I click on Jen, anyone I click on, I should see it here. So let's see if that works. Now let me click on John. Yeah, I got John. Click on Bob. I got Bob. Click on Jen. I got Jen. Click on Alice. So anyone you click on, you now have access to that particular one you clicked, right? Okay. All right. So now let's do something where for the particular one we clicked, probably you want to like listen to the one you clicked. So if whichever one the user clicks, you want to apply a different style to that element that was clicked. So we can have a state. Let's create a state. Let's just say constant active name. Let's say the active name by default is Jen. Now I want to style this that whenever the name is Jen, pick a particular style. And there's what we call ternary operator. Okay, so we have ternary operator is still a conditional, is a way of writing conditional statements. But now if you're writing a conditional statement here, you can say if this satisfied, do this, else do that, right? This is mostly how you're going to be writing a conditional statement, right? But then with ternary operator, it's still a conditional statement, but then is more represented so that we can use it inside JSX, right? So you can say if this condition is satisfied, then question mark means if this, do this, like if this is satisfied, then question mark, let's say, okay, yeah, do something. Then for you to get the else is just the colon, else do something else. So meaning that question mark, the first question mark means, how can I put this? The first question mark means if, right? Then this second column means else. You can see how this was written. If the condition I gave it here was satisfied, if this condition, do this, then the colon is else. Like if this condition is not satisfied, when it is negative, do something else. Right? A way to see this in action is if let me write a constant here that says check, right? So check if, let me just write a condition. If, I'm not writing if here. Let's say active name is equals to Jen. Now don't get this confused. This is where my constant, my variable ended. Now every other thing I'm writing is the condition. Okay, and I'm using the triple equal sign just to compare between these two. If active name is equals to Jane, I'll bring the question mark. Question mark active. Then else, how can I write the else? The else is with what? Colon. Else inactive. So this particular expression that I wrote here is still the same thing as, I might just end up commenting this out. It's still the same thing as if, yeah, if this return active, else return inactive. So this particular expression that I have here is the same thing as this, right? Okay, it's just there's a different way of writing it. Yeah, so you can use a ternary operator, or you can use this method. But what I'm telling us about this ternary operator is because when we are writing conditions like this within our JSX, that's within our return path where we have the elements that we're returning for that particular component, this is mostly how we're going to be writing our conditions. Okay, so yeah, let's have that in mind. So I'll just comment this one out. Now to see this in action too, we can just console log active, or let's say check, right? This check, that's what I gave it. So let me just put a string so I'll know that it is check. So what is active name? Active name is Jane, and I'm asking if active name is equals to Jane, give me active. If it's not, give me inactive. So currently, what should I get? I should get active. So the check should be active. Now when I go back, if I refresh, yeah, you can see check active, because active name is equals to Jane, and that's what I'm comparing here. So if active name is something else aside Jane, I should get inactive, right? So we can now say, let me just change it to Bob. So now, if active name is Jane, give me this. If it's not, give me inactive. Now with active name being Bob, it's not more going to give me active again. It's going to give me inactive. Going back, as you see here, check inactive, right? Because our name has changed from Jane to Bob, and this condition is no more satisfied. So it's going to return the else, they do something else part. So yeah, that is how to use ternary operator. I think I'll just put it here and comment it out. Now, how was I doing this? Because I want to have the ternary operator within the class name. Okay. Now, in my CSS, I want to write a class for active. So list item dot active. This means this list item dot active means if the class list item has another class within it that is also active, right? Dot list item dot active. If list item also, if the class list item also have another class within that is active, so give me the CSS properties. Now in this scenario, I want to give the user, let me say background color. Let me just say red for now, so we can see something that is obvious. All right. So I'm expecting if any of this class is active, the background color should change to red. Now let's see if that works. Okay, if I put active here, let me just include active as one of the class. If I put active, all the list item now has active, right? So which means all of them will be red. Now when I go back, I can see everything is red. Why? When you check your elements, you see that each of them have active, 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 right? But then I just want the one that is Jane, the one that's the name is here. If Bob is here, if the active name here is Bob, then the item, the list item that is Bob, should only have that um active class, right? So that's what I'm trying to achieve. So all of them will not have it every time. Now when I go back, there's a way to do it. I can pass a ternary operator here, right? I will say just wrap everything. There's no, because if you want to write any variable or ternary operator, in fact, if you want to do any JavaScript expression in React, you have to wrap it in a curly braces, then do your JavaScript expression. Just like when we wanted to map our names, we wrapped everything in curly braces. You can see open and close curly braces. Then we have names dot map, then all the map arguments and every other thing, and then we return this. You can see also when we wanted to pass index, index is a variable, right? Is a variable that contains the particular index of that item. We wrapped it in a curly braces here too. We didn't say this. No, it won't work because this is just listening to a string index, and that string index doesn't have any value to it. It's just a string. So for you to listen to this, you have to wrap it in a curly braces. Same thing with the item we have here. We need to get the item for each one. The item for each one. So we have to wrap it in a curly brace so we can get the particular item. The item is what gave us John, Jane, Bob, and Alice. So the same thing for the class name. For us to write that ternary operator here, we have to wrap all the class name in a curly braces. And then we will now listen. We'll say if, I don't need to write the whole if statement again. I will just use the active name one. If active name is equals to, let me say, this item is what has the value. So I want to listen if the active name is equals to that particular item. This item here can either be John, Jane, Bob, or Alice, because those are the items inside the array. So if the item corresponds with this active name, I want it to give you that class, that active class. So I'll say if active name is equals to, triple equals to item, right? If this is satisfied, then return list item with active. Else, after that particular declaration for the string, else, I want to return only the class name of list item. I believe we understood what I did here. So if active name is equals to item, include that active in the class. Else, just give me the list item. Now, when I go back, only Bob is going to be red, right? Because only Bob has the active class name. Now, when I check the HTML part, look at the HTML, you can see the one with John. John has only list item. Jane has only list item in the class. You also have Alice. Alice has only list item. But the one with Bob has list item and also active. So that's why it's picking that class of red, that active class. Now I can just dynamically come and change this to any other value here. I can choose Alice. And if I save, go back, you see that Alice is now red. Okay? You can choose any other one. You can write John. John is going to be red. If you put any other thing that is not here, let's say Mary. Without Mary among these, so none of them is going to have that class name of red because Mary doesn't exist among the arrays. So now in this situation, in this scenario, I want a particular one I clicked to be red. If I click on John, be red. If I click on Bob, be red. If I click on Alice, also be red. Now, if you're using JavaScript, there's a way you will do this with JavaScript, right? Just bare JavaScript. How can you do this? Instead of using the cost keyword, you're going to say let, right? And then let's say active name by default is empty because none of them is active yet. And then with this let keyword, I can manually change the value at any other time within the application. So here I can now say every time the person clicks, that's this onClick here. I don't need this guy here. Every time this user clicks, all right? Now set the active name equals to value. That's this value that I'm getting from the props. So anytime I click, set the active name to value. And you know why I didn't use let again or use const again? Because this particular active name has been declared here already. Now let's do this and see what we get. Okay, it's yeah, I don't know why it's not working. All right, so if you do this in bare JavaScript, it's going to work, right? But in React Native, there's how we manage states in React. Okay. Now I wanted to use this example to tell us, okay, this is how we do it in JavaScript, bare JavaScript. There are some scenarios where this might come in handy if you are using a library like React. But the basic way of managing a state in React Native, there's a hook we call useState. Now this hook, you import it from React. So you can say constant. I need to, okay, I've seen this active name actually. Okay, constant active name equals to React dot use state. So this React is what we have here. React dot use state. It's either you write it like this or you go ahead and import that use state. Okay. So here you can say comma, open and close the curly braces. Then here you can see all the hooks components that are made public or available by React, right? But we only need the use states. We still get to talk about every other hook here, right? So here you can just type out use states. Okay. So instead of using React.useState, I'll just say use state because I have use state here already. So I can just call it down. Now this is how to write a use state, right? If I want to write a use state, first of all, the constant is going to be set to an array. The variable name is going to be set to an array. Now, in the first array, let me write something. Equals to, sorry, okay, I'll just finish this here. This even give me what I want. Okay, this is how to write a use state, right? You start with constant, that's the keyword. You open and close a square bracket. This is a destructuring parameter. You can use it with objects, you can use it with arrays. Now, this particular use state returns two values for us, right? Those two values are like it returns two functions, what we can interact with, right, for us. The first one is the value. The second one is the set value. And they are all wrapped in a square bracket because it's an array. That's what it gives us, right? It's an array. And this value is just going to take whatever value I set initially. Then this set value is what I'm going to use to manually change this value time to time, some other time in the application, right? So after writing it this way, you now have equals to use state, that is, this is state that you imported, then open and close a curved braces. Then you have your initial value. So this initial value is what you want it to represent in the beginning when the user have not made changes to it yet. So by default, this is just this initial value space is what you want it to be by default, right? Now, let me now write my own. My own is going to be active name because that's what I wanted. So I'm going to write const, open and close a square bracket. I'm going to say active name, that's the value, comma, set active name. Then equals to use state. Then open and close. This is the space for initial value. And your initial value can be an empty string by default, right? Now this active name has already been used here. Now there's no need using this again. This active name has already been used here. So Now, if I console log this active name by default, see, I want to show you what this part does. Active name by default, if you go back, we're going to get empty. You can see it's line 9, and it's just empty. It's an empty string because there's nothing inside the string. But then if you say John, remember this space is the initial value part. So by default, it is John. When I go back, I'm going to see John. So this space is what is set by default. When the user have not updated this state yet, this is the value you want it to be by default. But for ours, I want ours to be empty. With this, even if I go back, I can see John is now red, right? Because this logic is happening. But then I want it to be empty by default. Now, if nothing is highlighted. Okay, now what I now want is anytime I click, update the active name value. And how can I do it? I'm going to use the second item in the array from the useState hook. We call it a hook, right? The useState hook, okay? So we'll call it a hook. This is the second item it returns in the array, and this is what we use to update the value. Now, how can I do this? I will say set active name, open and close a curly braces because the function that accept the value you want to set, the new value you want to set it to. So I can now say value. That's set active name to value. Where am I getting this value from? The one that is coming from this argument space for the click item. Where is the argument space of the click item here? Here. This is what is passing down. It's passing this item down, and I'm accepting the item as a value. And then when I set the item as a value, I'm setting the item to this guy here, this useState. So every time I click now, I want it to set useState to that particular item that I clicked. All right. So now let's see if it's going to work. If I click on John, John should be red. You can see John is now red because it has updated that state for us. If I click on Bob, Bob should be red. So anyone I click on now will turn red because of this set state, this set active name here is updating it every time we click. Right. So yeah, that's that. So now let me just style this a little bit, right? In my index of CSS, I'm gonna just give it a light green. All right. So this will work. All right. So anyone I click now should change to a light green. All right. So this is how to work with states. All right. So this value part is not a must, it's going to be a string. It can be any data type entirely. It can be an object. It can be an array. That's this initial value part. It can be an array. It can be an object. It can be Boolean. That's true or false values. It can be any type. It can even be, I don't know, anything you want it to be, right? It's going to take that form. So the only thing you need is, okay, the active name, which is going to give you the initial value or the current value, whatever it's set to. And then the set active name, that is what is going to change that value time to time whenever you want to trigger it or run it. So any question? All right, Emmanuel Morris.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay, I wanted to ask that ternary operator, can we use the if statement on it?
Yes, it is still if-else statement. You mean here?
No, like the ternary operator, you said for if is the question mark, then else is the colon. What if
Yeah.
in our operation we have another like else if?
Okay, else if. Oh yeah,
Yes,
the
sir.
else if. No, it doesn't really. So it means you have to write another ternary operator in a particular block, but that would
Oh,
just make it messy. So if you have active name equals to item this, so if you still want to write other condition here, you can still have another ternary operator inside here. You can still check again within this space after you have done this. Check probably if this is equal to this, question mark this, else that, before you now get to this part. But then you should be careful using it like that. So if you're going to have it that complex, it's better to write it as a function with if and else statements or else if. Then you now call that function here just to get the returned value.
No, all right. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Any other question? All right. So, okay. So that is it for using a state. And we can also come in. We can also use an input for this. Now I want to expand this div. Okay, let me create another component for my input. My input dot, sorry, JSX RAFCE. I'm going to make it capital I. It's actually supposed to be capital I here too. So this is just going to accept an input. Remember how to write the input element, right? It's a self-closing tag. Now we have exported our inputs. Now let's import it on app. This is where we need it. So I want my inputs here. When I go back, input is, oh, of course. Yes, I've not even imported inputs here. So we can now go up here and import inputs from string.slash_inputs. Okay, why the error? What did I do? I've already changed it to capital. We have my inputs here, but it is still crying here. Let me reload my VS Code. It should stop. Okay. All right. Now I want in a scenario where when I type any value in my input, I even need another button here. So let me create a button component. New file. Button.jsx. You have your RAFCE button. So here you have your button. Oh, sorry, button is not a self-closing tag. Open and close. So this button can say add. All right. Now let me copy this button and bring it to my app.js. Then import the button. I mean, it's best to import first before even calling it. Yeah, import the button from this. All right, so this is what I want. So when I type anything, okay, and then I click on add, whatever I typed should be added to the list, right? Right. So if I type anything, click on add, it should add it to the list. All right, so let's see. Remember when we did something like this in JavaScript? We did a whole bunch of create elements, then append the elements with the children we wanted to append. That's the values, the name, the email, and every other thing. Then after doing all that, we still went ahead to append what we have created, the new elements we have created, to the table body. So every time we click, it does all those things afresh. It creates an element, puts all the values inside, and then append, just like that. Okay, so how can we achieve that, right? Now I want to listen to the value of this input. Okay, so I need to create another state here that listens to that value. Remember how to create a state. Use state, right? Constant, open and close a square bracket, and we can call this value, all right, comma, set value, then equals to use state, and this space for initial value. I mean, we don't want it to have anything by default. I just set it to an empty string. Okay. Then after that, we need to import useState because that's why it's crying. It's telling us useState is not defined. We have not imported it. So at the topmost part of my code, I can import, open and close the curly braces, useState. I'll just type it out. UseState, yeah, import useState from React. Okay, now I need to pass this value and this set value down to this my input, right? Now, how can I do that? Back to my input component. Hey, okay. Now there's what we call props in React Native. I mean, we still have the props in bare JavaScript, but that props in bare JavaScript, it serves as an argument, right? Remember, if you're writing a function, remember this is a function, right? So if you're writing a function, you'll be able to pass an argument to it. We even did it somewhere in the list item. We wrote a function that accepts an argument, and the only argument is accept is just one argument, right? Value. And then here to pass that argument down to that function, open and close the curly braces, then pass the argument down, right? So it is different for components. We are still passing props down. We call it props, properties of that particular component. We are still passing it down, but then it's not going to be in this form. Now, this is how to pass props down. First, inputs with, yeah, input has a, okay, let's give it type of text first. Sorry. Type of text. Then we have other attributes, right? We have other attributes that we can explore. Let's see. Oh, there's just a lot. There's other attributes that you can explore. Regarding inputs, we have the placeholders too. Yeah, let us bring placeholder in. Okay, we also have value, right? Value is the value of that particular input. If you remember when we did bare JavaScript, we got the element by ID, that particular input, and then we did the input dot value. So that value is an attribute. So we can access it from that document. So using that document dot element by ID, then dot value. So this dot value is the value of that input by default. Okay. So you can say, if I say the value to be dive Africa by default, if you go back, you're going to see dive Africa here. You can see it, right? Let me zoom in. Yeah. So this is the input. You can see dive Africa. So it's the value of that input. But for a start, I want it to be empty. All right. Then we also have another property that we needed. That property is, sorry, that attribute is on change. Okay. On change is more like, how did you listen to that again, JavaScript? I mean, if there's also on change in bare HTML, just that we didn't use it. We are just utilizing the basic one from JavaScript. By default, when you're writing, it's updating the element's value. But then in React, you need to introduce this on change and really use it, right? Use it to get the value that you're currently changing on that input. So you can actually, let's write a function here. It accepts a function, not a string. So let's write a function that open and close an arrow function, then curly braces. Okay. So inside this curly braces, I want to console log something. Let's say changed. All right. So it's now indented, right? So we have the onChange function that accepts another function, console log change. So what this is doing is this onChange is whenever I change the input, whenever I type something in the input, whether I'm adding or removing, this onChange will be triggered and we call it with the actual value that I'm like inputting or removing. Now if I type A, you can see logs that has been changed. If I type another thing, S, changed again twice, you can see it 2 beside it. If I keep typing, it will be increasing, right? So the more I type in, the more the onChange is triggered. And there's a way we can really listen to what is being changed, this whole element. We can cache an event from this argument space from the function that we wrote in. So event, now let's console log the event instead of changed. So we'll just console log events, right? So anytime you change, cache this event from this particular input and then log it out for us. Now when I go back, clear out, and if I type anything, this is the event, right? And so this event contains all the basic things that we need to like interact with this input on the JavaScript part. So we can access the bubble, cancel everything, right? But what we need the most is the target because we want to get the value that we're actually typing in. Now, if I expand the target here, you're going to see value. So this value is what contains the value the user is currently typing in. So to access this, you have to, first of all, get the event. Event is an object. Then if you get the event, you get the target. So you're going to do event dot what? Target. So for you to get the value too, you're going to do dot value. So event dot target dot value. So that's how we can access the value. So now I can now say event dot target dot value. So this is also access the value from an input. Now, whenever I change anything I type, that's what is going to console log. So if I type D, you can see it gave me D. If I type E, it gave me an E. If I type U, it gave me an U because that's the current value. This is not updating because I have not done the actual controlled value, right? I am just typing a string. Remember, my value is set to empty, so it's not changing it. So I need to use useState and actually interact with this. So this is how to pass props down to a function. Now, this is my input function, right? And this my input function needs 3 things. One of the things it needs is on this argument space we have here, open and close the curly braces. All right, that's how to like accept a particular props that was passed down to this input. Now, this input, I need one thing. The first thing I need is the value. Okay, comma, right? It's an object. Another thing I need is the onChange. Okay, then the third thing and the very last thing I need for now is just the placeholder. All right. Okay, so value, onChange, and then placeholder. So in the value, we'll just go to the value space and add the value there. So instead of an empty string, we're going to have open and close the curly braces. I'll paste in my value. That's the value I got from this props. Then when I go to my placeholder, where's my placeholder? Open and close the curly braces. Put your placeholder in. Okay, then your onChange. So instead of having this whole thing, I'll just set my onChange to this. All right. So placeholder, value, and then onChange. Okay. Now this is what we call props. This is how to accept a props from a component. Then wherever you're not using the component, how can you pass these props down? These props need 3 things. If you don't give it these 3 things, it's not going to function well. Now this is where we're using it, right? This is the input and where we're using it. So we need to be able to pass this particular props down. How can we do that? In the argument space, sorry, in the attribute space, that's where we're going to pass everything down. All right. Now you can say value. the exact name that was given to it on that component, value, then this value needs to accept what value, this value that I have here. Now, this value can be anything, right? Can be new, can be item, like it can be anything entirely. Don't misuse, don't like think, okay, because we have value here, that's why we have value here too. No. This value that I have here is the property name from the input. Then what I want to pass down is this value from this useState. Okay? Then the next thing I need is what? onChange. All right? onChange. onChange is a function. Yes, let's say function. Let's write the function inside of it. Oh, problem, don't need this part. This is the function, right? And remember this function, we can get an event from here. Now I want this function to just accept something. Let's say set value. Because this is what we use to change this input. So I want whenever I change this input, change this value here from empty string to whatever the user typed. So set value, open and close, and then let us write John for now. Doesn't make any sense, right? But then I'm just putting John for now, just for a test case. So I'm expecting when I type anything into this input, regardless of whatever I type, the value should change to John because that's what I'm using here. Now, if I just type anything entirely, see, it changes to John. Why? Because I am setting the value to John here. But I want to set the value really to what I am getting, to what the user is typing in. We can catch that event here too. So you can catch that event from here. And then you can now target, you can now do event dot target dot value. All right. All right. So event dot target dot value. Now at this point, if I'm changing anything, it should work. If I type G, I should say G. If I type O A L, right? Yeah, everything is showing now. T H E R E, right? So I'm getting everything that I want. Okay. So my input is now properly controlled because the value and the onChange are syncing. Now, another thing that I need, the very last props is the placeholder. And the placeholder is a string, right? Obviously, I'll just say enter your name. Okay. Yeah, you can see the placeholder now saying enter your name. So I can now type in or, right? Anything entirely. Okay. So that's it. So now I want a scenario where when I type, whatever I type, if I click on add, it should add it to this. All right. Whenever I type, if I click on add, it should add this to this. So now let's see if our add function is even going to work. So where's our button? This is our button. Let's go inside our button. This is our button here, right? And then we need to listen to an onClick event of this button. Remember, you can actually do it in your JavaScript with document.getElement by ID, particular button, and then listen to the click event of that button. Whenever I click that button, go and get a particular value and do whatever I want to do with it, right? So it's just like we are doing replicating, but with React. So this button can take type of just normal button, nothing much. But we need to pass down an onClick event. So we need to listen to an onClick event of this button on click. You can see how I wrote my onClick, camel case, and that's how React is even recommended you write it. I see it here. So now we need to get an onClick event from our props space. So remember, open and close the curly braces, then accept onClick. onClick, not clock. So you can pass this onClick here. All right. Now I'm back to my button. Now we need to get that particular props. We need to pass these props down because this is where I'm calling the button. But first, let me write an argument. constant handle add value. So this is what I want to do whenever I click. Set it to an arrow function. Open and close your curly braces. Then here, just console log I am clicked. All right. So in our button, I will now get that particular onClick prop, and then this curly braces part, I'm going to set it to handle add value. All right, so whenever I click on this particular button, I want it to run this handle add value function. Now, and inside the function, I'm logging out, I am clicked. So let's see. When I click on add, I get I am clicked, all right? I am clicked. So whenever I click, I want it to log out this value. I mean, it's not even a biggie, just put the value beside it. So add, you can see I am clicked, the particular value. Oh, probably not with the value. Let's see. Add, yeah. So now if I now put Paul, if I click add, I'm going to see Paul. If I change Paul to Tessie, if I click add, I'm going to see Tessie, right? So I now have access to these values whenever I clicked. Now I want to do something with it. Okay, so that part is good. All right, now this list, go back to the list. All right, don't get overwhelmed with these comments. I was trying to explain something with it. But I'll still leave it here for, reference purposes. Now, on my, these names here, I don't want these names to be inside list. I want these names to be on the app.js. That's the parent component, because I want to modify these names from this particular space, right? Because currently names is inside list and there's no way I can have access to that names on the parent component, right? So for me to have access to it, I need to bring that names here, then pass it down as a props to list, right? So I can now have my names, constant names equals to, what do we have here? Go back to, we don't need button anymore. Paste names, right? So I will now pass these names down as an argument. So when I go back to my list, I'm going to accept an argument, a props that says names. So which means I don't need these names here anymore, because I am now getting it from the parent component. So now I'll pass these names down to this list. Here is the list. And I'm saying names, that is the prop name, set it equals to these particular names. Yeah, this should still work. Yeah, it's still working. It still works perfectly. Nothing changed. It's just that I moved where the array is coming from. Instead of being just inside the list, it should come from the parent component, which is the app component. Now, for me to modify these names, I want to make it also a useState, right? I want to make it a useState. So I can have multiple useStates in my particular component. Create another constant, open and close a square bracket. Let's say names, all right, comma, set names is going to be equals to useState, open and close a curved braces. Now this name is an array, right? It's no more a string, it's an array. And that's the place we have the initial, this place is the initial place. So I'm just going to paste it here. This and this is just the same thing. So I can remove this now. It's just that with this, I have advantage to set names, like update this array. When I go back, nothing will change. Why? Because the default is set to John, Jane, Bob, and Alice. If I remove Bob, Bob will go out from here. Now when I save, you won't see Bob, we will have only Jane, John, Jane, and Alice. All right? So, yeah, so that is that. Now we have the names for this particular components set inside the useState. So now what are we trying to do? Whenever I type a name, I click on add that name to that particular name array. So it should just update this array with the new name. Okay. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to say set names. That's this particular part, second part, setting it. Then open and close a curved braces. All right. Now I am setting it back to an array. It was an array before. I'm setting it back to an array. Remember, this one was a string. And when I'm setting it, I'm also setting it back to a string because the value is a string. So it is best when you are, whatever the default value is, you are updating the new value with that same data type, right? So now I need to set it to an array too. So remember how to write an array. Inside, I'm going to write open and close a square bracket or square braces. Now there is what we call spread operator. Constant. There's what we call spread. Spread operator. All right. So spread operator is more like a way of cloning a particular value, mostly used for arrays, but you can use it for objects. You can use it for anything entirely. So with this spread operator, you can clone what was there before, the initial value, and just probably have a clone of your own. And spread operator is mostly triple dots, right? Dots, dots, dots. That's all. All right? Dots, dots, dots. Now, if I want to spread these names, like to clone the name, I can just say CLG, that's I'm console logging, a square bracket. So instead of me just console logging names, in fact, if I console log names, I'm going to get it, right? I have the names. Okay. That's John, Jane, and Alice. Yeah, I have the names. It's an array. There's also a way I can write this with the spread operator. I'm going to start with a square bracket, make it an array. That is the value it was initially, right? It's an array initially. Then I will now spread the names inside. So for you to spread, you're just going to use the triple dots. 1, 2, 3. And then you write the name of the variable you're trying to clone. The name of the variable I'm trying to clone is names, right? So this is like, I want to create my own array. Then I want to clone the values inside the names array. Okay. Now I have my own array. That's the square bracket, open and close. Now I now spread through the names. So if I console log this, I'm still going to get this, John, Jane, and Alice in a square bracket, right? Because nothing has changed. Now when I go back, refresh, one thing with React, you might be getting logs twice. Don't worry, still talk about this. We won't progress. So you can see, we still have the same thing, line 13, right? In our JSS, line 13, exactly. But now the advantage of this spread operator is that you can take a particular array that already exists, clone it, and then add your own values, right? Now, I can come here and say, after I'm done spreading names, comma, I want to write my own names. I'll start with a string. Now, which name is not here? John, Jane, Alice, which is not here? Let's say Morris. So I want to have Morris. So what I'm now doing is spread through the names that already exist. And then this is my own array. I want you to include Morris. When I go back, you're going to see give me one. John, Jane, Alice, and what? Morris. Right? So that's a good thing. That's like a good way of using the advantages of using the spread operator. You can have multiple things actually. Morris must not be the last item actually. You can actually make it the first one if you want to. You can have Morris here or any other name. It mustn't be Morris. It can be David. Right? David came before the spread. Now when you go back, you're going to see David is the first item in the array. You can see it here. David, John, Jane, and what? Alice. Yeah. You can have another one. You can have Elizabeth. then after Elizabeth, comma, because we're in an array. So after every value inside the array, put comma. Now when you come back, you're going to see we have David and Elizabeth. Then we now have those three initial names. So that is how to use spread operators in an array. Okay, I'll just put it down here. No question about this spread operator, right? All right, so now let's see. Back to my set names. On this handle add value, you can see set names. Whenever I click on add value, create my own array. So I'm setting it to a new array. But then this array, I want it to still observe the values that already existed before. So what am I going to do? I'm going to spread what? Names, right? The names is this guy. Then I want to add my own value. But this value, I want it to be exactly what the user typed in. So it's going to be this value here. So whatever the user typed in, whenever I click on add, pick that value and then add it to this array. I'm going to comma value. That's all. Now let's see it in action. Now when I type Judith, if I click on add, you can see we have Judith here. When I click on Judith, changes to light green. And do every other thing with it. Christos, add, you can see Christos here. So yeah, I'm just updating that array, and then the array, remember, is mapping down, so it's going to always refresh itself. So it's going to have the latest value that I just added. Now, one more thing, I want whenever I add, it should clear this value. You can see that even after adding, the value is still here. Let me add one more. If I add Morris, if I click add, come down, Morris is here, but we still have Morris in the input. So I want a scenario where when I add it, it should clear out the name that I added. So it's simple. What you're going to do is, after you're done setting the names, just come down. After the set names, you now do set value. Set value is this second argument or second return statement from this state, and that's what you use to change the value. So you say set value, set it to empty string, because at this point it has a value, but when I'm done adding that particular value, we set it to empty string. Now when I go back, just refresh, we have only John, Jane, and Alice. Okay, if I add Elizabeth, click on add, yeah, we have Elizabeth, and now you can see that the inputs have reset back to empty. All right, any questions? No question. All right, I think you should have questions, because this is probably the end of our class for today. So if you have any questions, sending props from one component to other, manipulating with useState, creating your own component, anything entirely, let me know. In our next class, we'll definitely dive deeper to how to arrange your SRC folders and everything. You can see we have a lot of components here. There's a better way you can write it so that every component is grouped in one particular folder. All right, Nafisa. Hello, Nafisa. You have your hand raised.
I want to add, please. Good evening, Mr. John. Please, can you explain the spread operator again, please?
All right. So the spread operator, yeah, it is used to clone an already existing value, right? You use it to clone what already exists, right? And for you to do that, you are going to have that particular value, probably your own value, and then you put ... before that particular one you want to clone. Now I want to clone names, right? I want to clone names. I want to have my own version of an array, but inside my array, I still want to have the values inside names. So what can I do? I can create my own array and then spread through what's already existing names and then add my own informations inside that array. So that's what I basically did here. Now you can see the example I gave. These names initially only have John, Jane, and Alice. That's the default value. By default, it's an array, right? John, Jane, and Alice. Now I want a new array that have my own values, but still has values from the names. I will now create an array. Now, when you're using a spread operator, it's good to know that you are going to use that spread operator in the same data type that the original value is on. Okay? If the original data type is, if the original value data type is an array, if you're spreading it, you must spread it inside an array. If the original data type is an object, if you're spreading, you're going to spread it inside an object, right? So the original data type of names is an array. You can see start with square brackets and close the square bracket. So if I want to spread it, I must spread it also inside an array. So that's why I created my own array. You can see my own array here, open and close. Now in my array, I have David and Elizabeth, but then I also want to have these items from the names. So I now spread it here. And how to do that is just put dot 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 before the name of the value. So you now spread it. Now, if I console log this, I'm going to see David, Elizabeth, and then all the values inside the names array. So with this, that's how I was able to update this names property. By default, it's John, Jane, and Alice. But I want whenever the user enters an input and save, you should add that value there. So for me to do that successfully, I need to clone this because I need to observe and respect what already exists as the value, initial value. So that's what I'm doing here. First, I have my own array inside the set names, open and close. I have to spread through what already exists, right? So after spreading through what already exists, I now put comma my own value, whatever the person typed. So that's mostly how to use spread operator. It's good to know that if you're spreading, you can only use it for the same data type. If it's an object, you cannot carry an array and spread it inside an object. You just get just break your application. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. All right,
Yes, thank you.
thank you, my person. Any other question? All right. Before our class today, I promised us that every time I'm going to do a just design a particular template out there. But today I came late and I'm actually running low on power, like my battery is down. So I would love to do it now, but then I'm not sure I can spare the I have the energy on my system, like the power source to do that. So probably on our next class, we'll get to that. So in the absence of no other questions, I'll be handing the mic over to Alex. Alex, are you there? All right, please exercise patience while I try to connect with Alex.
Okay, I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I was busy with something. Are you done?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I want to invite someone to come speak with the students about 10 to 15 minutes. We want to talk about the project they are going to be working on next week. So just give me a minute. Let me get to him.
All right.